Sometimes the biggest truths in the NFL don't come from carefully crafted press conferences, sanitized beat reporter interviews, or calculated insider leaks. They come from those raw, unfiltered moments. Those accidental slips that weren't supposed to happen, but reveal everything you need to know about what's really going on behind closed doors. That's exactly what made Chad OchoCinco's recent appearance on Nightcap with Shannon Sharpe so absolutely explosive. Picture this. 1 second, he's casually praising Cleveland Browns rookie quarterback Shedeur Sanders, throwing around the usual compliments you'd expect from a former NFL star. The next second, he drops a bombshell that changes everything. I talked to Denzel Ward. You could literally see it in his eyes the moment those words left his mouth. That split-second realization that he just said something he wasn't supposed to say. That look of, oh no, did I just reveal too much? But by then, the secret was already out there, floating in the digital universe, impossible to take back. Here's what makes this revelation so earth-shattering. Denzel Ward isn't just any player giving his opinion. This is the Browns' all-pro cornerback, a guy who faces elite quarterbacks every single week during practice. When Ward covers receivers, he's studying every quarterback's release, reading their eyes, analyzing their decision-making under pressure. He knows the difference between a good throw and a great one, between a quarterback who's just going through the motions and one who's genuinely special. And according to Chad's slip-up, Ward didn't just say Shedeur looked good. He said the rookie looked different. That's not a word that gets thrown around lightly in NFL circles, especially not by a defensive back who's made a career out of picking apart quarterbacks' weaknesses. When a player of Ward's caliber uses the word different, it means something extraordinary is happening. But here's where this story gets even more intriguing. If Shedeur is so different, if he's quietly dominating behind the scenes and earning praise from all pro defenders, then why is he still buried at 4th on the depth chart? Why isn't he getting the reps that his performance apparently deserves? What's really going on in Cleveland's quarterback room that the public isn't seeing? The internet immediately exploded with speculation. Was this a real endorsement from one of the league's top defensive players? Is Shedeur Sanders quietly putting together the kind of practices that have veteran players taking notice? And most importantly, how long can the Browns coaching staff ignore what's apparently happening right in front of them? This isn't just another rookie quarterback story. This is about a player who's apparently so impressive that even opposing defenders can't help but acknowledge his talent. It's about secrets slipping out, depth charts that might not reflect reality, and the possibility that Cleveland has stumbled onto something special without even realizing it. Let's break down exactly what happened, why it matters, and what it could mean for the future of the Browns' quarterback position. Trust me, this gets wild. Shedeur Sanders' fall in the 2026 NFL Draft wasn't just surprising, it was a systematic humiliation that played out in real time for millions to witness. This wasn't a player who had question marks about his ability or concerns about his character. This was a quarterback who, just months earlier, had been absolutely torching defenses at Colorado, breaking records and making NFL-caliber throws every single week while playing behind one of the worst offensive lines in college football. Think about what Shedeur accomplished at Colorado. He didn't just put up numbers. He elevated an entire program that had been struggling for years. Game after game, he stood in collapsing pockets, delivered strikes under pressure, and made the kind of throws that had NFL scouts frantically scribbling notes. His poise was legendary, getting hit repeatedly but never losing his composure and never panicking, always finding a way to move the chains. Professional scouts weren't just impressed, they were genuinely excited about his potential. His mechanics were textbook perfect, his decision-making was advanced beyond his years, and his ability to read defenses was already at a pro level. Some analysts had him graded as a late first-rounder, with many more projecting him as an early second-round selection at worst. This wasn't wishful thinking. This was based on legitimate tape study and measurable skills. Yet when draft night arrived, Shedeur found himself in the most uncomfortable position imaginable, watching some more. Name after name got called, through 43 of them, to be exact, before his phone finally rang. Teams passed on him in favor of safer prospects, system quarterbacks who had put up numbers in college but lacked his arm talent, and even untested backups who had barely seen meaningful playing time. The one guy who had Deion Sanders in his corner, NFL bloodlines running through his veins, and game tape that literally screamed pro-ready, suddenly wasn't good enough for 31 teams. It wasn't just a slide down the draft board. It was a public declaration that the entire league had serious doubts about his ability to succeed at the professional level. Picture Shedeur is sitting in his draft war room, surrounded by family and friends, watching quarterback after quarterback get selected ahead of him. Players he had outperformed in college, players who didn't have his arm strength or his football IQ, players who couldn't make the throws he made routinely. The cameras captured his stone-faced reaction, but you could see the fire building behind his eyes. By the time Cleveland finally pulled the trigger at pick Sanford 4 deep in the 5th round, the damage was already done. It wasn't just about where he was drafted. It was about the message the entire league had sent. They didn't believe in him. They thought he was a project, a developmental player, maybe even a career backup. But here's what makes champions different from everyone else. They take that doubt, that disrespect, that public humiliation, and they transform it into pure fuel. While everyone else thought it was a devastating setback, Shedeur Sanders took it as the ultimate motivation, and that mindset is exactly what's driving everything that's happening in Cleveland right now. Cleveland's quarterback room this offseason hasn't been a competition. It's been a full-blown circus, complete with drama, controversy, and enough storylines to fill a Netflix series. Let's count the players in this chaotic ensemble. Deshaun Watson, Kenny Pickett, Joe Flacco, Dylan Gabriel, and now Shedeur Sanders. That's 5 quarterbacks, each carrying their own baggage, expectations, and levels of chaos that would make even the most experienced coaching staff's head spin. Deshaun Watson is the elephant in the room, the highly paid enigma who's supposed to be the franchise savior, but is coming off a devastating Achilles injury. The Browns invested $20 million guaranteed in him, making him untouchable regardless of performance. He's the guy who has to succeed, because the alternative is admitting one of the worst personnel decisions in NFL history. Joe Flacco represents the feel-good story that nobody saw coming. Last season, he was literally pulled off his couch to save Cleveland's playoff hopes and somehow managed to do exactly that. Now he's back, trying to prove that his late career renaissance wasn't just a fluke. He's the veteran presence, the steady hand, the guy who knows how to manage games and avoid catastrophic mistakes. Kenny Pickett is the redemption project, a former first-round pick looking to resurrect his career after Pittsburgh essentially gave up on him. He's got the pedigree and the arm talent, but also the baggage of being labeled a bust by his original team. Cleveland is betting they can unlock something that the Steelers couldn't find. Dylan Gabriel is the coaching staff's pet project, the 3rd-round investment who represents their vision for the future. He's got the college production, the mobility, and the scouting department's full endorsement. On paper, he's everything modern NFL teams want in a quarterback: accurate, athletic, and intelligent. And then there's Shedeur Sanders, the uninvited guest who crashed the quarterback party. He wasn't part of the original plan, wasn't factored into the depth chart discussions, and certainly wasn't expected to make any meaningful impact in his rookie season. He's the contingency plan, the afterthought, the guy who's supposed to be grateful just to be in the room. But here's where this circus gets really interesting. In the NFL, reps are currency. Where you were drafted, how much you cost the team, and who vouched for you determine who gets to throw the football, not necessarily who plays the best. It's a political game as much as it is a football competition. And Shedeur walked into a situation where all the politics were working against him. The established veterans get the first team reps because of their experience and contracts. The higher draft picks get priority because the organization needs to justify their investment. And the 5th-round rookie, he gets whatever scraps are left over, regardless of how well he performs when given the opportunity. That's the world Shedeur Sanders entered, a world where talent doesn't always equal opportunity, where politics often trumps performance, and where proving yourself means overcoming not just defensive backs, but organizational bias. Yet as training camp has unfolded, it's becoming increasingly obvious that the original plan might have been completely wrong. When you're the 4th-string quarterback in an NFL training camp, there's an unwritten playbook you're supposed to follow. Play it safe. Throw it short. Avoid mistakes at all costs. Try not to get noticed, because getting noticed usually means you've done something wrong. Most importantly, know your place in the hierarchy and don't rock the boat. Shedeur Sanders apparently never read that playbook, because he's been doing the exact opposite of everything a 4th-string quarterback is supposed to do. At Cleveland's mini-camp sessions, while everyone's attention was focused on the veterans and higher draft picks, Shedeur was quietly putting together the kind of performances that have coaches doing double takes and veteran players raising their eyebrows. The numbers tell an incredible story. In 5 open practices where statistics were tracked, Shedeur completed an astounding 77.4% of his passes, the highest completion percentage of any quarterback on the entire roster, including all the veterans who were supposed to be ahead of him on the depth chart. But here's what makes those numbers even more impressive. He wasn't just dinking and dunking to inflate his statistics. Shedeur was throwing strikes across the middle of the field, the kind of passes that require perfect timing and absolute confidence. He was launching lasers on deep out routes, threading the needle between defenders who were giving maximum effort to make plays. In red zone drills, where space is limited and every throw has to be perfect, he was delivering frozen ropes that hit receivers in stride, giving them the best possible chance to make catches in traffic. His footwork was crisp and professional, showing the kind of mechanical consistency that usually takes years to develop. His timing was already at a pro level, releasing the ball at exactly the right moment to give his receivers the maximum advantage. Most importantly, he wasn't wasting a single snap. Every rep was treated like it mattered. Every throw was delivered with purpose and precision. Meanwhile, Dillon Gabriel, the team's third-round investment and supposed future franchise quarterback, was showing inconsistency that had coaches concerned. Some throws were short of their targets, others were delivered late, disrupting the timing of routes. The arm strength was clearly there, but the control and consistency that NFL quarterbacks need to succeed were noticeably absent. The contrast was stark and impossible to ignore. While Gabriel worked with the first-team offense, getting reps with the best receivers and running backs, Shedeur was making magic happen with third and fourth string players who were fighting just to make the practice squad. He was making fringe receivers look like Pro Bowl candidates, turning routine drills into highlight reel moments. Yet despite the lopsided performance statistics, the depth chart remained unchanged. Gabriel continued to work with the ones, Shedeur stayed with the threes and fours. The reps didn't reflect the results, and the politics of the situation seemed to matter more than the actual football being played. But something was building beneath the surface, a momentum that couldn't be contained by depth charts or organizational politics. Players were starting to notice, coaches were having quiet conversations, and the whispers were getting louder. The silent domination was about to become very public. When Chad Johnson casually mentioned to Shannon Sharpe that he had talked to Denzel Ward about Shedeur Sanders, he probably thought he was just sharing some harmless locker room gossip. What he actually did was pull back the curtain on something much bigger, the kind of behind-the-scenes buzz that reveals what's really happening when the cameras aren't rolling and the reporters aren't listening. This wasn't just any player giving his opinion about a rookie quarterback. Denzel Ward is Cleveland's all-pro cornerback, a defensive back who has made a career out of studying quarterbacks' every move, reading their tendencies, and exploiting their weaknesses. When Ward covers receivers in practice, he's not just going through the motions, he's analyzing every quarterback's release point, studying their eye movement, and testing their decision-making under pressure. Ward faces elite quarterbacks every single week during the regular season. He's covered passes from Aaron Rodgers, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, and every other top-tier quarterback in the league. He knows the difference between a good throw and a great one, between a quarterback who's just going through the motions and one who possesses that special something that can't be taught. According to Chad's revelation, Ward didn't just say Shedeur looked good. He said the rookie looked different. In NFL terminology, that's about as high a compliment as you can receive. Different means you stand out from the crowd, that you possess qualities that separate you from the pack, that you have something special that catches the attention of even the most experienced professionals. But Ward's endorsement apparently went deeper than just general praise. Johnson hinted that Ward had specifically mentioned how Shedeur's passes sound different coming out of his hand, a reference to the distinctive zip and velocity that elite quarterbacks possess. There's a certain sound that a perfectly thrown football makes when it's released with proper mechanics and maximum efficiency, and veteran players can recognize it immediately. More importantly, Ward apparently noticed how Shedeur's presence on the field shifts the entire energy of the practice. When he's running the offense, receivers run their routes with more precision, linemen block with more intensity, and the entire unit operates with a different level of focus and execution. That's not something you can fake or manufacture. It's the kind of natural leadership that some players are born with. The fact that this praise was coming from the defensive side of the ball makes it even more significant. Defensive players have no incentive to build up opposing quarterbacks, especially rookies who are supposed to be easy targets. When a defender of Ward's caliber goes out of his way to praise a quarterback's ability, it means that player has earned genuine respect through his performance. This wasn't media spin or carefully crafted public relations messaging. This was raw, unfiltered truth. From a player's perspective, the kind of honest assessment that carries real weight in NFL circles. When word of Ward's comments started spreading, fans went crazy, reporters began digging deeper, and social media exploded with clips of Shedeur making incredible throws to receivers who suddenly looked like Pro Bowl candidates. The Browns' official response? Deafening silence. And sometimes silence says more than any press release ever could. As the buzz around Shedeur Sanders continued to grow throughout Cleveland's training camp, the organization's official stance remained frustratingly consistent. It's early in the process. He's developing nicely. We like what we see, but we're taking it one day at a time. standard coach speak that revealed absolutely nothing while saying everything about the political dynamics at play. But behind the carefully crafted public statements, a glaring contradiction was becoming impossible to ignore. The double standard in how different quarterbacks were being evaluated and discussed was so obvious that even casual observers could see through the organizational spin. When Dillon Gabriel struggled in team drills, throwing behind receivers, missing open targets, or making questionable decisions under pressure, coaches would immediately frame these issues as growing pains and praise his poise and grasp of the playbook. His mistakes were explained away as natural parts of the development process, evidence of a young quarterback learning to adapt to the professional level. When Shedeur lit up the same drills with pinpoint accuracy and advanced decision-making, the response was either complete silence or vague, non-committal answers about rotational reps and evaluating all our options. His successes were consistently downplayed, brushed aside as products of luck, circumstance, or the fact that he was working against lower-level competition. This is the harsh reality that players talk about when they discuss organizational bias. When you're the guy the team expects to succeed, the higher draft pick, the bigger investment, the player who fits their predetermined plan, your flaws get reframed as temporary setbacks that will be overcome with time and coaching. Your struggles are viewed through the lens of potential rather than performance, and every small improvement gets magnified as evidence of your inevitable success. When you're the guy they didn't plan for the late-round pick, the afterthought, the player who wasn't supposed to matter, your successes get minimized, and your contributions get overlooked. No matter how well you perform, there's always an excuse ready. You were facing weaker competition, the defense wasn't giving full effort, or it was just a lucky day that won't be repeated. The media coverage reflected this organizational bias perfectly. Every Gabriel completion was analyzed and praised, with reporters writing detailed breakdowns of his improved pocket presence and developing chemistry with receivers. Meanwhile, Shedeur's consistently superior statistical performance was barely mentioned in practice reports, relegated to brief footnotes that failed to capture the magnitude of what was actually happening on the field. Even fans could see through the transparent double standard. Social media was flooded with frustrated comments from Browns supporters who were watching practice footage and wondering why the best-performing quarterback was getting the fewest opportunities. Every tweet highlighting Shedeur's completion percentage or showcasing his highlight reel throws gained massive traction, while posts about Gabriel's progress were met with skepticism and calls for more equal evaluation. The most telling aspect of this double standard was how it affected the distribution of practice reps. Despite consistently outperforming his competition, Shedeur remained locked in fourth-string purgatory while Gabriel continued to work with the first-team offense. The message was clear. Organizational politics mattered more than on-field results, and predetermined depth charts were more important than actual performance. But momentum in the NFL is a powerful force that's difficult to control indefinitely. Players were talking, fans were noticing, and the statistical evidence was becoming too overwhelming to ignore. The coaching staff could play political games and protect their earlier investments, but they couldn't hide the fact that their fourth-string quarterback was outplaying everyone else in the room. The double standard was creating tension that extended beyond just the quarterback position. Other players were watching how merit was being evaluated, and the message being sent was troubling. Performance stunts to always determine opportunity, and sometimes the best player doesn't get the chance he deserves. There's a brutal truth about the NFL that every player learns eventually. Hype can carry you surprisingly far, but only for a limited time. When the bullets start flying in real game situations, when the pressure mounts and the stakes get higher, talent and preparation matter more than draft position or organizational expectation. Dillon Gabriel was about to learn this lesson the hard way. Gabriel entered Cleveland's training camp with every possible advantage. He had the third-round draft pedigree that commanded respect, the college statistics that impressed scouts, and the early endorsement from the coaching staff, who had specifically targeted him as their quarterback of the future. His height was listed generously, his arm strength was praised consistently, and his mobility was highlighted as exactly what modern NFL offenses needed. But when the real evaluation began, when defenses started bringing pressure, when reads became more complex, and when split-second decisions determined success or failure, that carefully constructed hype began to crumble. Gabriel's arm looked impressive throwing to stationary targets, but when pressure collapsed the pocket, and he had to make throws on the run, his accuracy became inconsistent and his decision-making showed concerning flaws. The height issue that had been glossed over during the draft process became impossible to ignore in practice. Batted balls at the line of scrimmage became a recurring problem. and his ability to see over NFL-sized defensive linemen was clearly compromised. What had been described as adequate pocket presence in college looked rushed and panicked when facing professional pass rushers who could actually reach him. Meanwhile, Shedeur Sanders was demonstrating exactly why talent evaluation should focus on performance rather than projection. Despite getting significantly fewer opportunities, he was making the most of every single rep. His throws weren't just accurate, they were placed with the kind of precision that gave receivers the best possible chance to make plays after the catch. The contrast in how they handled pressure was particularly striking. When Gabriel faced simulated pressure in practice, his mechanics would break down, his footwork would become erratic, and his throws would sail high or wide of their targets. When Shedeur faced the same pressure, he remained calm, kept his eyes downfield, and consistently found ways to deliver accurate passes, even while defenders were bearing down on him. The whispers around the facility were becoming harder to ignore. Scout team players were talking about how different it felt to run routes when Shedeur was throwing the ball. Defensive players were acknowledging that he presented challenges they didn't face with other quarterbacks. Even coaches, despite their public commitment to the depth chart, were having private conversations about what they were witnessing. Gabriel's supporters could point to his draft position and his college resume, but they couldn't explain away what was happening on the practice field. The gap between expectation and reality was widening every day, and the player who was supposed to be the future was being outperformed by the player who wasn't even supposed to matter. This wasn't about disrespecting Gabriel's talent or dismissing his potential. It was about recognizing that sometimes the best player isn't the one you expect, and sometimes the most important discoveries happen when you're not even looking for them. Kevin Stefanski finds himself in one of the most challenging positions any NFL head coach can face, managing a situation where the best performer does. Align with organizational expectations, where merit conflicts with politics, and where making the right football decision might mean admitting that earlier evaluations were wrong. As a head coach in the modern NFL, Stefanski has to balance multiple competing interests simultaneously. He has veteran quarterbacks with guaranteed contracts who need to be managed carefully to maintain locker room harmony. He has rookie investments that the front office expects him to develop and showcase. He has ownership and management breathing down his neck, expecting results that justify their personnel decision. And he has fans and media scrutinizing every move, ready to pounce on any sign of favoritism or poor judgment. So far, Stefanski has played the political game masterfully, saying all the right things about competition and development, while avoiding any statements that might create controversy or undermine team chemistry. His press conferences have been models of diplomatic coach speak, praising all quarterbacks equally, while revealing nothing about his true evaluations or future plans. But the tape doesn't lie, and neither do the statistics. Every practice session provides more evidence that Shedeur Sanders is outperforming his competition, and every day that passes makes it harder to justify keeping him buried on the depth chart. The coaching staff can see what's happening. They're not blind to the performance disparities, but acknowledging it publicly would create a cascade of difficult questions and uncomfortable admissions. Sticking with Dillon Gabriel protects the team's earlier draft investment and maintains the narrative that their evaluation process was sound. Giving Joe Flacco and Kenny Pickett the bulk of first-team reps honors their experience and avoids the appearance of disrespecting veteran players. But what message does this approach send when the best-performing quarterback in the room continues to get fourth-string treatment? The locker room is watching, and players notice when merit isn't being rewarded appropriately. Veterans understand the politics of the NFL, but they also respect performance, and they can see who's making plays when given the opportunity. The longer Shedeur remains underutilized despite his superior practice performance, the more questions arise about whether the coaching staff is making decisions based on football ability or organizational pressure. Stefanski's dilemma is compounded by the fact that training camp is approaching rapidly, bringing with it preseason games, joint practices with other teams, and national exposure that will make it impossible to hide performance disparities. When the lights get brighter and the evaluation becomes more public, the coaching staff won't be able to rely on depth chart politics to explain away obvious talent differences. The clock is ticking, and Stefanski can't play it safe forever. Eventually, he'll have to choose between protecting earlier organizational decisions and embracing the reality of what's happening on the practice field. The longer he waits to make that choice, the more difficult it becomes to justify, and the more pressure builds from players, fans, and media who can see the obvious solution to Cleveland's quarterback competition. The question isn't whether Stefanski recognizes Shedeur's talent, it's whether he has the courage to act on that recognition when it matters most. Training camp represents the ultimate crucible in the NFL, the place where reputations are made and destroyed. Where Depth charts get rewritten, and where the harsh realities of professional football separate the pretenders from the contenders. For Shedeur Sanders, the approaching camp represents both his greatest opportunity and his biggest challenge, because this is where the truth becomes impossible to hide. 3 preseason games, joint practices with real defenses, and national television exposure will create a level of scrutiny that makes minicamp look like a casual workout. Every throw will be analyzed, every decision will be dissected, and every moment of pressure will reveal who has the mental toughness to succeed at the highest level of professional football. The beauty of training camp is that it strips away all the politics, all the draft position considerations, and all the organizational bias that can cloud evaluation during the offseason. When you're facing a live rush from NFL pass rushers, when you're trying to complete passes against all-pro defensive backs, and when you're making split-second decisions that determine whether drives continue or stall, none of that background noise matters, only performance counts. If Shedeur continues to perform at the level he's shown during minicamp, if he moves the ball consistently, makes throws under pressure, and demonstrates the kind of leadership that elevates the players around him, the Browns won't be able to bury him behind depth chart politics anymore. There will be too many eyes watching, too much footage available, and too much undeniable evidence of his superiority. The joint practices will be particularly revealing because they'll provide the first opportunity for outside evaluation of Cleveland's quarterback situation. When other teams' coaches and scouts see Shedeur perform, when national media members witness his practice sessions, and when former players and analysts start commenting on what they observe, the narrative around his development will shift dramatically. Preseason games will take the evaluation to another level entirely. Television audiences will see every quarterback's performance. Statistical comparisons will be unavoidable, and the gap between expectation and reality will become obvious to millions of viewers. If Shedeur outperforms the quarterbacks ahead of him on the depth chart, which his minicamp performance suggests is likely, the pressure on the coaching staff to adjust their plans will become overwhelming. The Browns will face a choice that can't be delayed or diplomatically avoided: lean on their safe picks and protect their earlier investments, or embrace the rookie who has already proven he belongs on the field with the best player. The longer they wait to make this decision, the more difficult it becomes to justify keeping superior talent on the bench. But here's what makes this situation so compelling: stars don't wait for permission to shine. They don't ask for opportunities, they take them. And everything about Shedeur Sanders' approach to this situation suggests that he's not planning to wait for the coaching staff to recognize his talent. He's planning to make his case so convincingly that ignoring him becomes impossible. Training camp will be where the whispers become shouts, where the secret becomes public, and where Cleveland's quarterback future gets decided by performance rather than politics. This isn't just another rookie quarterback story about a late-round pick trying to make a team. This is about what happens when talent refuses to be ignored, when character overcomes circumstances, and when preparation meets opportunity in the most dramatic way possible. Shedeur Sanders is about to take Cleveland by storm, and all the signs are pointing to an inevitable rise that will reshape the Browns' entire quarterback situation. The foundation has already been laid through months of superior practice performance, statistical dominance, and the kind of quiet leadership that earns respect from teammates and coaches alike. While other quarterbacks have struggled with consistency, Shedeur has been a model of reliability. While others have wilted under pressure, he's thrived in challenging situations. While others have made excuses, he's made plays. The endorsements are piling up from people who matter: all-pro defenders who face him in practice, former NFL stars who recognize elite talent when they see it, and media personalities who understand what separates good quarterbacks from great ones. These aren't casual compliments or manufactured hype. These are genuine assessments from professionals who have seen the highest level of football and know what it takes to succeed. Momentum is building in ways that can't be controlled or contained by organizational politics. Social media buzz, fan demand, and media attention are creating pressure that will force the coaching staff to give Shedeur the opportunities his performance has earned. The longer they resist this pressure, the more obvious it becomes that they're prioritizing politics over performance. But what makes Shedeur's rise feel inevitable isn't just his talent or the external pressure, it's his mindset. This is a player who took being drafted in the 5th round as motivation rather than discouragement, who used being placed 4th on the depth chart as fuel rather than defeat. He's approached every practice, every rep, and every opportunity with the mentality of someone who knows he belongs at the highest level. The transformation from overlooked draft pick to legitimate NFL prospect has been remarkable to witness. In just a few months, Shedeur has gone from being an afterthought in Cleveland's quarterback room to being the player everyone is talking about. The whispers have become conversations, the conversations have become debates, and the debates are about to become undeniable reality. Training camp will be the final stage of this transformation, where private excellence becomes public recognition, where statistical dominance translates to meaningful opportunities, and where the player who wasn't supposed to matter proves that he might be the most important quarterback on the roster. The Browns can continue to play politics, protect their earlier investments, and hope that their predetermined plans work out as expected. Or they can embrace the reality that sometimes the best discoveries happen when you're not looking for them, and sometimes the most important players are the ones who earn their opportunities rather than having them handed to them. Shedeur Sanders' rise isn't just inevitable, it's already happening. The only question is whether Cleveland's coaching staff will recognize it in time to benefit from it, or whether they'll be forced to acknowledge it after it becomes impossible to ignore. Speaking of incredible quarterback transformations, and players refusing to be defined by their circumstances, you absolutely need to see what's happening with another Browns quarterback situation that's got the entire football world buzzing. The story I just shared about Shedeur's quiet rise is just one part of a much bigger picture that's unfolding in Cleveland right now. If you thought Shedeur's jump from fourth string was impressive, wait until you see the even more dramatic promotion that has haters absolutely fuming, and veteran coaches saying they've never witnessed anything like it in 15 years of professional football. This isn't just about practice performance anymore. This is about a transformation so stunning that it's changing how people view the entire Browns quarterback competition. Video you need to watch next reveals the shocking promotion that has everyone from Stephen A. Smith to veteran NFL players taking notice, and it explains exactly why this might be the most dangerous quarterback situation in the league right now. Trust me, after seeing how these stories connect, you'll understand why Cleveland's quarterback room is about to explode in the best possible way. Click the video on screen now to see the promotion that has the football world absolutely shaking, and discover why this quarterback transformation might be the most important story of the entire NFL season. You won't believe what happened next in this incredible journey from the bottom of the depth chart to legitimate NFL stardom.